Okay. Um, so I was very impressed with Kendra Hall because she did such a phenomenal job as far as explaining with the stories. And kind of before I get into that, because you all know I've been reading, how many have has anybody started the book, The 10 Times is Greater Than Two Times?
Hmm.
And have you been reading that? Isn't that excellent? I love just how they talk about with the focus. I'm a person that I feel like I can do a ton of things and do everything very well. But we all know that's not really true. You can do a lot of things and do them okay, but if you want to get really good and just hone your skills, then it's kind of focusing, on particular avenues because we're all good at particular things and we all have a focus and a passion in certain things that we gravitate to. Does that make sense? And I like he uses the example of Michelangelo in the beginning of the book. And what I like that he talked about is so many times, and I was actually talking with my daughter-in-law about this. And it's the same with your kids, it's the same with myself that I've done. I always underestimate what I could do or what my kids could do. And one of the things he said that Michelangelo did and why he excelled and just in his art is he did projects that were far beyond impossible beyond what his current skill level was. It was way and above beyond anything that he had ever done before. And he says in here, he says, people are afraid to commit fully to the 10 times process because it requires letting go of your current identity, circumstances, and comfort zone. And isn't that the truth? So many times, I don't know about you guys, but when I try to go out of my routine and start to do something new, whether it's business or physical or something else, myself wants to take me back to that comfortable place. And he talks about that in here. He says, going 10 times means you're living based on the most intrinsic and exciting future that you can imagine. It's what you imagine. It's not even where you're at. You're not even close to being there. And then the 10 times future becomes your filter for everything you do. And most of your current life can't make it through that 10 times filter. And he says, what got you here won't get you there if your goal is different than what you have. And it kind of makes sense. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? And so I kind of keep reminding myself of that because I have a tendency to want to go back into that comfortable area where I know that I can do it well. I know that I'm really good at this, but I need to go beyond that and see myself in a different place. That 10 times place. And he says in here, he says, you're letting the past dictate what you do and how you do it. Two times is linear, meaning you're striving to double your output by doubling your effort. You're doing more of the same thing, just faster and harder, and you're spending more time. And I said, gosh, he's so right. Because as I was sitting there, I was thinking, even at conferences, because I started reading the book, I took the book with me. And at conference, I began thinking about the people that I could approach as far as the product. Who could I approach as far as the product? And of course, we want to update everybody on the product. We want to get that information out there. The emails are wonderful to be able to do that. And then newsletters and other forms to be able to get that information to people on our Facebook group, on social media. But I was looking at it to really personalize and get together with everybody. And I said, wait a minute. I'm doing the same thing that I've always done before. And if I want different results, I have to change that. So, like I'd said, I have Jordan working on a postcard that would be duplicatable that I could make a lot of copies. And I want to go to businesses. I want to go to businesses and show them how they could use this as an additional piece with their business. And even find something, and I'm because this may be something you want to do. Find what they specialize in and use that. If I like that, what they're specializing in, be able to send people to them, to again, to promote their business as well, because different salons specialize in different things, right? Would you agree with that, Denise?
Yes. Yep.
Some will specialize in having a lot of hair care products, right? Some might specialize in having skincare products. You probably tell us more about that than anybody. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, some salons are just definitely hair. Other ones, do wellness work. That's becoming very popular in the salon industry, is bringing wellness in. And, some salons carry like CBD products now. And I'm lucky my boss lets me display some of my Shackley stuff in my private room. But I think it's great to check in with them,
to see.
especially with the collagen too, because women, that's a big complaint I get about people, their hair's falling out. Their hair's not what it used to be. So yeah, I think Shackley has a lot of good stuff for salons.
Okay, that's good to know. And that would make sense because their hair isn't as thick and it does tend to thin out as we get older. So I just liked how they put that, and they talk about how we get stuck in that two times mindset. And so we think we need to have more, to race for more, but it's actually not about more, it's about less, but it's about focus. It's about focus and kind of where you want to hone that, where you want to put that focus. And he talks about going 10 times is the simplification of your focus down to the core essential. So if you know what you're going to focus on, then the other things are going to be a smaller part of what you're doing, right? Does that make sense? So it just kind of depends on what our focus is going to be. So obviously my focus, I love leadership. I love teaching leadership and helping others to learn and move forward. And so I would really like to focus more on that aspect. So I would like to bring more leaders in to be able to focus more on helping them to grow, instead of growing of course, I'm always going to talk to new people. I'm always going to grow our business, but my focus isn't on that anymore. I really want to begin to focus in that other area. So I've got to start focusing on other things. And I've got to start, I've got to put myself into that new identity. And the other thing they talk about is it is an internal. We always talk about vision, identity, and a really good one for anybody that is reads biblically and we know anything about imputed righteousness is that Christ sees us as we already are. We're not there yet, but he sees us as we will be. And that's kind of what we have to do. We have to envision who we want to be, who that person is, because when you start beginning to envision that, you begin to act like that. You begin to do the things that that person's going to do. It can sound kind of weird to some people, or a little funny, but Dr. Shackley talked about it all the time. What you think you are, what you think you do, and what you think you become. And going 10 times means your attention is directed on far less, but it's more potent and impactful because it's focused. And it's not about a specific outcome. It's more about the process, expanding your vision and your standards, simplifying your strategy and your focus, identifying and removing non-essentials, developing mastery in different unique areas, leading and empowering others who are excited to share your vision. So it's about transforming us. It's about transforming me into that person that I want to be for others. And it's peeling away the layers, the onions, right? Letting go of our former self and transforming us. So I just thought that was really neat, you know, that he talks about that, because for me, storytelling has been very difficult. But I can see just by what Kendra Hall, again, I know Mary's seen the video on Kendra. I think Leah, you did too, right?
Not
With
yet.
no? How about Sharon, Deneen? Did you guys see that yet with Kendra Hall?
I watched you mean the one that's in with the Shackley from the conference?
Yes.
I'm watching that now. I saw about the first, I don't know, part of it, but I'm
Okay,
not done with it yet.
that's okay. It's just excellent. And what I did is I sent out an email, and I'm going to share my screen. So I'm on her email list so that I get things from her every week. And this was one of the emails where she talked about her storytelling. And she talks about 4 stories that every network marketer needs today. And she goes down through, and did you guys get this? Were you able to open this and see this?
I got it. I've not opened it yet.
Okay. All right. Good, 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 good. And she talks about how her grandmother was one of the best salespeople that she ever saw. And she talks about her and how she wore a shower cap whenever she went outside. And she loved going with her to craft shows. And and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase a little bit. She would go and she would set up her table. She would have endless containers full of plastic needlepoint coasters, toilet paper roll covers, Kleenex box holders. You know the kind I'm talking about, right? Crocheted ornaments, Christmas tree skirts, googly-eyed Santa. She had all kinds of things. You name it, she needlepointed it. And then there was her bestseller, which was the golf stroke counter. And I thought this was interesting because she talks about how there was 10 big colorful beads wrapped in a particular way between thick pieces of crafting cord. And each time a golfer took a stroke, they could slide the bead up the rope and play a fair round. Because we forget, right? We forget how many strokes we've had. And so Kendra remembers standing next to her. And like a light switch, Grandma turned on when those people started coming. She held up items and she told stories about watching her grandson hanging Santa ornaments on the tree, her party guests envying her tasteful toilet paper, that had that pretty holder on. Her best story was talking about Judith and the golf stroke counter. She told her potential customers about Judith, how her memory would fail her, and she used to cheat. The stroke counter stopped her from cheating and saved their friendship. So she would sell golf stroke counters like nobody's business. And so she said if you asked her grandma if she considered herself a salesperson, she would laugh and say, no, not me. She says, I can't sell a thing. But you could see the big stack of cash in her handbag. Okay. And so her grandmother wasn't selling, she was storytelling. And it's interesting because I'm part of this other group, and we were talking, and I was sharing some of the ways that I would, share with people. And I was like, I don't want to come across salesy. And one of the ladies called me out and says, well, I would consider that being salesy. And she was right. And so just kind of stepping back, I would like the other thing about storytelling, and it doesn't always have to be your story. You can use other people's stories. So if you don't have that story yet, that's okay. You can use somebody else's. And so our business is storytelling. That my mom was so good at that. She was excellent at storytelling. I mean, she would just tell all kinds of stories. And so stories stick. And talks about the 4 types of stories. And I love her outline because I printed it because I went in and I started to fill in the blanks that she has here. And the reason we need stories is because stories are an incredible bridge that can bridge, it's an incredible tool that can bridge the gaps in a very short time. People can connect with you. And so she has different stories in here, 4 different ones. One is the value story about your product. And obviously we actually have, all of us who have used the product, I have tons of stories. I have tons of them, but it's easier for me to tell the benefits of the product than it is to remember the stories and tell the stories. Because I'm a type of person, I really like knowing the facts. I like knowing the bullet points of something. So again, that's been something I've had to work on. And so she just talks about how when you're sharing your products with people, sometimes they don't see things the way you do. And she's right. People don't recognize the value. And that's kind of where the gap comes in. And I can see that with myself. I need to work on my storytelling because sometimes I wonder why people won't get started. And I think it's because I'm not connecting with them in some way. Maybe they're not, but I think that I can connect better. I can get better at that. And so knowing what can connect you and your potential customer to help them, to know what the benefits they will experience. So choosing to tell those stories, what you've seen, what you felt. And so she has this little table here. Find your product value story. And her question is, what is something you talk about when you talk about your products? The features, the benefits. She says, list as many as you can below. And then on the other side, for those examples, identify a specific moment in your life when you saw or actually experienced that. And I'm going to give you one of mine because I went through these. And what I'd like to do is, if you haven't done this, I would love for us to do this together. I'd love for us to be able to talk about some of those things so that we could use each other's stories. I think that would be very powerful because we each have different stories. And the more stories we can accumulate, the more we can relate with different people. And so one of mine is, obviously, I want to look and feel younger. Our products, both the nutritional products, help me to feel younger and look younger. And the outside products, the skincare products, also help me to look younger. And I'll never forget it, how good it felt when I was taking my 20-year-old son to work. Okay, I was running him back and forth. I think something was wrong with his car or something. And I was taking him back and forth to work. And it was interesting when I picked him up and he got home one day, he said, yeah, he says, you're never going to believe this. He said, I had a couple of the guys ask if you were my girlfriend. And I was like, okay. That made me feel like what I was doing was helping me to feel, that what I was doing was making a difference, obviously, because it obviously I'm trying to think, I'm 55 and he is 32. So that's quite an age gap, but I guess there is the age gap in the world today. And so, they made some comments of how young I looked, that they couldn't believe that I was his mom. So at that point I was like, wow, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because what I'm doing must be working. So that made me feel really good. And then another, and I'm going to open it up to you guys if there's anything in particular that you can think of to share now. But the other thing is longevity. How these products can really make a difference in the longevity of your life, not just longevity, but in health, and how you're living your life. And my mom, I'm very fortunate that my mom, because she had very poor health and she lived a lot longer than was expected. And I'll never forget how she would go with my daughter and they would have grandma day. So she was able to, through many, many years as she was growing up, she would go once a week and they would have their grandma day. And just for my daughter to be able to have those memories, with her, how wonderful that is. And so I want to have those memories and I want to help other people to have those memories, to be able to have many, many, many grandma days, and I was able to have some of those grandma days just recently, so just talking about something like that kind of gets me choked up because what I'm doing is I'm sharing an intimate moment within my own life. Does anybody want to share before I go on to the next one?
I just would like to share something that I notice about you, and I think you are wonderful with asking questions, when it comes to finding out, I just, in our meetings, you've just conveyed to me, that's something I generally need practice in. I tend to start talking and then stop talking and immediately remember, Leah, ask a question, But with you, you are so good at asking questions, and my kind of take on that is you're learning a lot about them, and then that opens up avenues for you to share stories when you find out what they're interested in because you've been doing such a great job at asking questions.
Yeah, I'm still working on that, but I'm uh have gotten better at asking questions. And like yourself, I have a tendency to want to talk and share all the wonderful things because we have so many wonderful things, but forgetting to ask questions, because I think it helps people to realize that we're placing a value with them and we want to learn about them. We want to be able to help them, and so yeah, I think asking questions does help us to relay the story that would be most meaningful to them. It's a good point. Thank you for sharing that, Leah.
Well, thank you. You've been a great inspiration to me in how I can do better.
Well, thank you. That's my avenue. That's one of my goals, most definitely. And then
I
oh, go ahead.
said, I agree.
Oh, well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. I need to hear that.
That's
And-
something that Bruce was always chiding me about, I guess you'd say. Did you ask them? Did you ask them this? Did you ask them that? And he was my teacher. But I wasn't always good at following.
Sometimes we don't want to listen.
He was a teacher for many, Mary. I was a student of his as well.
Yeah, and I still hear different things that you and Leah share. I didn't know Bruce well because I was still quite young. But I hear good things. So
This, I don't know if this is a good question to ask right now, but Danielle Delgado in her training was teaching to find out what kind of person the other person was. And if they were the type of person that wanted all the details and the statistics, then that's what you would aim for. So that's a little bit different kind of training, I guess you'd say.
yeah, but yeah, you're right, because we have the different personality types. And so it's kind of learning to understand the personality type. If somebody is a we call them I think it's a sanguine. And there's animals that they use. I can't remember the animals, but it's the fun-loving person. They want to know all the fun things, what am I going to be able to do? I want to be the life of the party. How many events are we going to go to? Right? And then your person that is more detailed oriented and your thinker, they want to know all the details. You got to give them the details or they're not going to go any further. Your directors get to the point. Get to the point, give me where I need to go and help me to get there a little bit faster. And then there's there's one more, your relator. They're the ones that they're a friend to everybody. They're really good listeners, as well. They're the most favorable type of all four. But yeah, that definitely does play a part as well. I would agree with you, Mary. The second story that she talks about is your business opportunity. Having a story to be able to share, to help them to understand the value of joining your business. And so, and it, I think with the stories, for me, it can be a kind of difficult because it's taking you to a different level of relationship, if that makes sense, with somebody, because there's different levels. And it takes you to I think it does, a more personal level with people. And she asked the question, what is a positive attribute that you mention when you talk about your business? What are those? For me, a couple of them that really stuck out to me was fun and a sense of belonging. I think are two that really important, and financial freedom. And for me, I got thinking about with the fun and the sense of belonging. And I have to say that Shaklee has, since we really started building the business and getting more involved, getting into and listening to different things that Shaklee has, and me getting involved, with our team, getting involved with some other people and learning. It's really given me a sense of belonging because I never felt that. I always felt like I was an outsider, even in high school. I felt that way. I always felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong because I wasn't part of any sports. I didn't really involve in any clubs, and so I didn't feel like I ever belonged. But with Shaklee, I'm excited to go to a conference. I'm excited to go on a trip because there are people there that are looking for me. There are people there that I'm looking for. And when we get together, it's fun. We went to Puerto Vallarta, and a whole group of us, like 10 of us, that we talk to on a weekly basis. That's why I want you guys to go on the trip. Is we went to down at the beach at Puerto Vallarta and got to watch the eclipse together, and enjoy that moment. And it's a feeling that I've not had before. With Shaklee, having that sense of belonging, being part of a community, like-minded people, that we're on the same track. And I really appreciate Shaklee for that. That has really done a lot for me as a person. And then another story that I remember, and again, I'm going to open it up to you guys if there's anything, but I really want you to think about these because you can use these stories, to share with other people. Financial freedom. We struggled as a young family. There's a lot of families that struggle. And I just,
You got a sweetheart there, Mary.
Oh, I don't see. I can't, must be out to move my film over. I can't see.
You know which one it is? Wait, move over a little bit.
Ah, there's a little one.
You know which one it is?
I couldn't see her. I seen all you guys waving and smiling, and I was like, what are they waving at?
I'll be right back.
All right. But I would have to say the financial freedom, because when my kids were growing up, I always felt like we didn't have the money. Well, we didn't have the money. And I always had to say, no, we can't afford that right now. No, I just can't get that. And I'll never forget taking my kids to, they were young, they were probably 6 and 8, maybe younger than that. And I'll never forget it. We took them to this fun Christian musical group, and they had these little toys that would wind, and you know how they have all these kinds of things to sell, at any type of function for kids. And I could not afford to get them one, and they really wanted one. And it wasn't a lot of money, but I just didn't have it, and Shackley has helped us to be able to not have to say no, to be able to give some of the things, not that we need them. God always provided everything we needed. There was always provision made, but sometimes I wanted some things. And Shackley's been a great vehicle to allow me to be able to give more, to be able to say yes to more things. And I like that. I like being able to do that. I'm going to open up. Is there anybody that can think of a story?
I'm somewhat similar in that when I was introduced to Shackley, there was not much money to go around. My former husband had decided to leave his job and start a business, and there just wasn't any money. And then I met Mary, and the Shackley, I guess it was pretty much the energizing soy protein and fiber in a day, made such a difference for me. With my blood sugar, I'm like, I need to keep getting this. And so it became a way for me to get the Shackley supplements for me. And then also my former husband too, he was using them also, but a way to get these things that would not fit in my budget otherwise. But the bonuses I was getting from Shackley were paying for these products that were making such a difference in my health, and if I didn't have those bonuses, I would not be able to have kept taking and using the Shackley products for all these years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my mom saying that because they couldn't afford the Shackley products, very little. And so she really enjoyed being able to get her products free. I mean, that was her first goal, because she wanted to use more of the products, and she saw the value and the difference that it was making. And that was her main goal, was to do it so she could pay for her own products. So yeah, that's a really, really good point. Very good point. So again, and these are things that I've thought about, but haven't really honed into a story, to be able to kind of take, and I've got to practice that. I've got to practice those so that I can get better at telling it. And then the third one, she says, is your purpose story about you. We know that stories stick. And so not actually about your product or business, but more about you and what is true for you. So she says here, list your best character and leadership traits. What are some of those? And one that I hear often from people is, I'm a positive, encouraging person. And I've been able to encourage a lot of people, through this. And again, she says, when is a specific moment when you exhibited that trait? And I'm just going to use some of the most recent, and I've got to think more about this because there's plenty, but one of the most recent was when we were in a group meeting with another group, and she was going through a lot of things with her dad. And she just was not able to, she just felt like she wasn't doing what she needed to do, and that she mentally just couldn't. And I understood that, because this was just this year. This was just about a month ago. And her dad has been very ill. And so I just began to share with her some of the things that I had been going through and the way I had been feeling and what I decided and how I could get through without feeling guilty about not spending that time in my business. You know, worrying about, am I going to let this person down or that person down? And I think people generally are very understanding. And so I just shared with her some of the main things, just to focus on this and let the rest go right now, because she needed to focus on her dad. And later on, she thanked me, you know, for sharing those things. And that was encouraging. And that gave her what she needed to continue, you know, and feel better about the whole situation. So obviously that makes me feel wonderful because I'm able to contribute into her life. And that's one of the best parts about Shack. The best parts is encouraging people, you know, with all different aspects, you know, of their life, and not just in health or with the products. You know, I've been able to do it in many other ways, and I'm sure all of you have too. Does anybody have any stories they want to share, anything with that one? No? I'm going to move on. These are things I want you to think about and work on for next week. Just start thinking about that and jot some things down. The fourth one is purpose story that you tell yourself. This is what we're speaking to ourselves. And we need to reinforce the purpose behind what we're doing, you know, why we're doing it, you know, and what we're telling ourselves. And I like this. She has a whole bunch of different questions here that you ask yourself. Ask yourself a time when you did something hard that you didn't think you could do. Well, I'll tell you, one of the most difficult things I have ever done
Hey, Joe.
was doing business invites, asking people to take a look at the business. That was one of, I never thought I could do that, but I can do that. And I can do it much better now. A time when I was scared or nervous, but did it anyway, phone calls. I was terrified to do phone calls. I would be so nervous. I'd be making up all kinds of excuses not to get on the phone. Anybody else like that? And so I would do it anyway. A time when someone told me that I wasn't good at something and I proved them wrong, or it wouldn't work, you know, and I'll never forget it. At Delta, we had an old boss. He's not there anymore. And I was telling him about the business and network marketing. He goes, "Oh, that doesn't ever work. Nobody ever makes any money." And I said, "Well, I beg to differ with you." I said, "My parents make 6 figures a year and I'm making some pretty good money too. So if that's not making money, I don't know what is." You know, so he got a little eye-opening there. And then a time, I'm just going to skip down here, a time when I realized that I needed something different in my life. And I realize sometimes I get stuck and I need to grow and I need to put forth new goals to stretch myself. It's so easy to get stuck and comfort and
Sorry.
but we all need to expand and grow, because that's how we're made. We're made to grow, even if it's something small, you know, to help ourselves to grow. And so it's just, I love how she made it a worksheet so that we could go through and kind of ask ourselves some questions. And so now she says, get busy writing them out and then practice telling them out loud. Get comfortable sharing them. And so that's why I think it would be good for us as a group to write down some of our stories and share those stories with each other. and then obviously begin to share them more. And so she just shares about her grandmother. But every time that they approach the holidays, she sees those needlepoint masterpieces all around her. And she tells her kids, as they hang the ornaments on the tree, she tells about her great grandma Phyllis and the questionable friend Judith that was a cheater, and how her art continues to live on. And so she says, the next time you find yourself in one of those pesky sales situations, she says, sense the sarcasm here, shift your thinking. You are not a salesperson. You're a storyteller. She says, do that and your business will never be stifled and you'll never have the fear of selling again. And I like that. Because many times for me, and she's got her different books that are here too, you want to read a little bit more about her. But and one of the things that I would get, I was, my goal when I first started inviting people was to invite one new person a day. And I, after a while, sometimes I would be thinking, all right, when I see this person, I've got to think of things to talk to them about. And then I would get very nervous and I would get anxious. And I said, okay, this isn't working. I got to change something. I got to grow from this. What can I do to change this? And what I realized is I needed to just be a friend and learn about people. If I would just take the time to get to know them and worry about asking some of those questions later, and that invite a little bit later, kind of put that in the back burner and just kind of get to know the person, it would flow a lot easier. And it does. What a tremendous difference. So those are some of the things that I've learned. Anybody want to share anything about any of that information or have questions?
When somebody tells me that I can't do something or that won't work, that just spurs me on to do it for real, They've done that. They're like in college, the professor said, no one ever gets an A in my class. I'm like, are you kidding? And then I did, or somebody, people will tell me with home improvements, you can't do that. And I'm like, I can figure this out, and so, yeah, for somebody saying I can't do it or, it's not going to work, it's just spurs me on to do it for real.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I remember back many years ago how difficult it was for me to get started in the business. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I guess I have already told you how I got started using the products because your mom, Marcia's mom, had sent her friend Shirley to see us. And Shirley had driven about 40 miles to see us and wasn't about to leave until we bought some products. And we finally ended up buying some of the supplements she recommended, and I think a gallon of Basic Age. And we didn't have any money for it and put it on a credit card. I think I don't know how she took a credit card, but anyhow, I know we couldn't afford it at the time. And we had been taking some Puritan Pride supplements where you buy one and you get one for a penny. And that was, the Shaklee supplements just seemed a little out of our price range. So we stuck them in the cupboard and saved them for special occasions. And then about a year later, we had a special occasion, which was, we were planning the birth of our third child as a home birth. The first two had been born in the hospital, and we wanted a home birth that time. We had a doctor lined up to come to our house, and he lost our address well, about a month before I was due with her, Bruce had spotted the Shaklee supplements in the cupboard and took them out and told me to start using them every day because he wanted me to get built up with the birth so I didn't have any problems. So I had started taking them at that time. I couldn't say I really noticed any difference because I felt horrible anyway. In my 9th month. So anyways, our doctor lost our address, and so Rachel arrived before the doctor did. And when he came, he checked her out and he said, "This is the clearest sounding newborn I've ever examined." And then a little later, after he finished smoking his cigarette in our house, came over to me and he asked me what kind of supplements I'd been using. And I said, Shaklee. And he said, "You stay on that. That's the best you can get." So I stayed on it. And I remember I just recuperated so much faster after the birth. I felt back to normal in a week instead of 6 or 8 weeks with the first 2 kids. And Bruce was working at an office then, and people would ask him how I was doing. And he told them, "Oh, I was doing so much better. And I was taking this Shaklee supplements." And pretty soon he had people interested in trying Shaklee. And so then I think about that time, your mom offered to come out to Ohio to do a meeting for us. She wanted us to get some people together. And this was, I think, the end of October, maybe, or it might have been November. Rachel was born 10th of October. So it wasn't too long after birth. And Bruce gave me the job, of course, of inviting people. And I didn't know anything about doing that. And I was a nervous wreck. I remember my hands were sweaty when I picked up the phone. Oh, it was horrible, but I think we invited 25 people and had 2 show up.
Oh my gosh.
But those 2 bought products, and that got Bruce more excited. And I remember one of them got some really good results with his hands had been real stiff, and he got some good results using the products. So anyhow, that's just a little story for you.
Yeah. It's interesting how you would think certain people that are very social, it seems inviting to something like that can be a barrier. That is a barrier for a lot of people. It was for me in the beginning until I said I'm going to do it anyway. Because it's something I have to learn to do.
Yeah, well, I had to do it because your mom was coming, so.
And you didn't want to disappoint her.
Right.
And Marcia's mom was persistent, it sounds like.
Right.
She was very persistent.
Which is why she stayed with it and built a great business. She was
Yeah.
persistent. Yep.
Yeah, she was. Anybody else? Thank you for sharing, Mary.
You're
I'm not
welcome.
the only one that was nervous calling.
On this note, I think I'm going to get going because I'm going to call that gentleman before I chicken out.
Let us know how it goes, Denise.
Okay. All right.